We live in an age where human confidence is paraded as the highest virtue. We are told that if we only believe in ourselves, we can scale every mountain, conquer every fear, and bend life to our own will. And yet, if we look honestly into our hearts, we find that self-belief alone often collapses at the first great storm. Strength, borrowed only from ourselves, has a way of slipping through our fingers when the night grows long and the weight grows heavy. Human strength is a fragile thing. It can carry us through seasons of joy and even withstand certain storms, but inevitably there comes a point where it reaches its end. We all know this truth deep within ourselves, though the world often tries to disguise it. We push, we strive, we plan, and we labor, only to find that our energy wanes, our confidence falters, and our hearts grow weary. There is a boundary to human ability, a line we cannot cross by sheer willpower. No matter how much determination burns in our chest, life eventually presents a burden too heavy, a wound too deep, a mystery too great. And at that very point of limitation, we discover the vast difference between human strength and divine strength. Divine strength has no end. It is not like a candle that flickers out when the wind rises. It is more like the sun, rising every day without fail, pouring forth light and warmth. Human strength depends on circumstances, on health, on mood, on environment, on resources, but divine strength exists apart from these things. It comes from the eternal, unchanging God who is never depleted, never diminished, and never overcome. Where our strength ends, His begins, and where ours collapses, His sustains. This is not merely an abstract idea. It is a reality proven in the lives of countless people who, at their weakest, found themselves upheld by something greater than their own effort. Think for a moment about the battles you have faced in your own life. Perhaps there were moments you believed you could not endure another day, yet somehow you did. Perhaps you were certain the pain would consume you, but it did not. In those moments, it was not merely your grit or cleverness that carried you. It was the invisible hand of God strengthening you in ways you could not see. We often imagine strength as loud, forceful, and dramatic, but divine strength can also come quietly, like a steady hand on your shoulder, keeping you from collapsing. It is not limited by exhaustion or fear, and it does not falter when the night seems endless. The human spirit is resilient, yes, but resilience alone is not enough. Without God, our resilience can turn into stubborn pride, a refusal to admit our need for help. But with God, that same resilience becomes endurance, a strength that perseveres not because of what we are, but because of who He is. We were never meant to be self-sufficient. We were created to be dependent on Him. Just as a branch withers if it disconnects from the vine, so too do we falter when we attempt to live apart from the one who sustains all life. Our strength is borrowed, His is original. Our strength runs dry, His overflows eternally, and it is often in our weakest moments that we come to truly see this. When all human effort has failed, when all options have been exhausted, when the heart finally cries out for help, that is when divine strength reveals itself most powerfully. What looks like the end of us is often the beginning of God's work in us. He does not merely add a little more power to our own, He becomes our strength entirely. Where we would collapse, He carries. Where we would despair, He gives hope. Where we would surrender to defeat, He whispers that the story is not yet over. The paradox of life is that human strength is most glorious when it admits its weakness and yields to divine strength. We were not designed to be limitless beings. We were designed to walk hand in hand with the limitless one. And when we accept this truth, we find that our limitations are not chains, but doorways through which God's endless power enters our lives. So, when you feel your strength falter, do not despair. It is not the end. It is the very place where God begins to show you that His strength has no limit and His power never fails. The world loves to tell us that independence is the highest form of strength. From the earliest days, we are taught to stand on our own 2 feet, to make our own way, to live as if we owe nothing to anyone. The phrase self-made is spoken with admiration, as though the greatest achievement of life is to be completely detached from reliance on others. Yet, if we peel back the layers of this illusion, we discover that independence is not the mark of greatness, but rather a mirage. The truth is, no one is truly independent. Every breath we take, every beat of our heart, every sunrise that greets us is given, not earned. Dependence is not weakness, it is reality. Think for a moment about the simplest act of breathing. Do you command the air to enter your lungs, or the heart to keep beating within your chest? These things happen because of a source beyond your control. You did not design your body, nor did you choose the laws that keep the world in order. The very ground you stand on and the sky above you are not yours to manage. Everything you claim as yours is in fact borrowed. Even the skills you have, the talents you display, and the opportunities you seize come from circumstances, people, and providence outside of your making. Independence, when seen clearly, is an illusion we cling to because we fear admitting how deeply reliant we truly are. This false sense of independence often makes us proud. We begin to think we can live without God, that we are the masters of our destiny, the architects of our fate. Yet life has a way of breaking this illusion. Illness strikes, plans collapse, loss enters without warning, and suddenly the strength we thought we possessed proves insufficient. In these moments, dependence is revealed not as a flaw, but as the very structure of existence. We are not gods, we are created beings. To live as though we can do all things on our own is to build a house on sand. Sooner or later, the storm exposes its weakness. Dependence on God, however, is not a shackle, but a foundation. It does not diminish our dignity, it secures it. Imagine a tree boasting of its independence, claiming it has no need of soil, water, or sunlight. How long would it survive once uprooted? The roots may seem hidden and the soil unremarkable, but they are the very reason the tree stands tall. So it is with us. God is the unseen root, the quiet sustainer of life. Without Him, all our accomplishments are like leaves that wither. With Him, we find stability, nourishment, and growth that no storm can uproot. It is humbling to admit dependence. The human ego resists it because dependence requires surrender, and surrender requires trust. But once we release the illusion of independence, we begin to see life as it truly is. We are not abandoned to carry the weight of existence alone. We are upheld by a God who never grows weary. Dependence on Him does not strip us of freedom. It frees us from the crushing lie that we must be enough in ourselves. It allows us to rest, to breathe, to live with peace, knowing that we are not left to navigate the storms without a guide, nor to fight battles without a strength greater than ours. Independence says, I am the source. Dependence says, I know the source, and only the latter can give lasting security. The world may admire those who claim they built their life without help, but heaven recognizes those who know they are nothing without God. To depend on Him is not to be small, it is to be real. It is to see the world as it truly is, a place where everything flows from His hand, and where our only true strength is found not in self-reliance, but in reliance on Him. Independence is a dream that fades, but dependence on God is the reality that endures. Success has a glitter that dazzles the eyes, but without God it quickly fades into emptiness. The world teaches us to chase achievements, to measure worth by titles, possessions, and recognition. From childhood, we are conditioned to believe that climbing higher, owning more, and being celebrated are the signs of a meaningful life. Yet countless men and women who reach the summit of worldly success confess that the view is lonelier than they ever imagined. Their hands may be full, but their hearts are hollow. For success without God is like a feast without nourishment. It may look appealing, but it cannot satisfy the hunger of the soul. The human soul was not designed to be filled by wealth, applause, or accomplishment. These things can bring moments of happiness, but never lasting joy. Why? Because the soul is eternal, and temporal things cannot meet eternal needs. When a person builds a life without God, success becomes like sand slipping through fingers. No matter how much they grasp, it is never enough. There is always a bigger house, a higher position, a louder cheer to chase after. And the more they pursue, the more restless they become. As one philosopher said, the soul is restless until it rests in God. Without him, success becomes nothing more than a treadmill, lots of movement, but no arrival. History is full of examples. Men who conquered nations, women who rose to fame, leaders who commanded armies, all eventually came to the end of themselves. Some were haunted by despair, some consumed by fear, some destroyed by the very victories they sought. They discovered too late that crowns tarnish, wealth withers, and applause dies down. What seemed like triumph became a prison, because it lacked the one thing that gives success true meaning: God Himself. Success apart from Him leaves a gnawing void that no amount of effort or achievement can fill. But success with God is different. When God is at the center, achievements do not define us. They simply serve as instruments for His purpose. A career becomes more than a job. It becomes a calling. Wealth is no longer a trap. It becomes a tool for blessing others. Influence is no longer a burden. It becomes a responsibility to reflect His light in a darkened world. With God, success is not measured by how high you climb, but by how faithfully you walk with Him, and in that faithfulness the soul finds peace. The difference lies in motive and foundation. Without God, success says, "Look what I have done." With God, success says, "Look what He has done through me." One path glorifies the self and ends in emptiness. The other glorifies God and results in fulfillment. The heart that seeks God first will find that even the smallest success, a kind word spoken, a life touched, a burden lifted, carries more weight than the grandest achievements without Him. We must learn to ask not simply, "What am I achieving?" but "Who am I becoming?" For a soul that gains the world but loses its anchor in God gains nothing at all. True success is not about the accumulation of trophies, but about alignment with the Creator. When He is absent, everything loses meaning. When He is present, even the simplest task can shine with eternal value. In the end, success without God leaves us tired, empty, and searching for more. But success with Him fills the soul with peace that no failure can steal, and no worldly prize can surpass. For only God can turn achievements into eternal treasures and make the soul whole. Without Him, success is hollow. With Him, success becomes life itself. The very word surrender often stirs resistance in our hearts. It sounds like loss, like throwing down our weapons and admitting defeat. In the world's eyes, to surrender is to be weaker, smaller, less than the one who stands victorious. But with God, surrender carries an entirely different meaning. It is not a collapse of dignity, but a release of bondage. It is not defeat, but the beginning of freedom. For only when we let go of the illusion of control do we step into the life we were created to live, anchored not in our power, but in His. We spend so much of our lives clinging. We cling to plans, to possessions, to people, to our own stubborn pride. We hold tightly to the wheel, as if we could steer through every storm by sheer force of will. Yet the more we cling, the heavier the burden becomes. Control is a weight too great for any human to carry. Anxiety, fear, and exhaustion often grow out of the soil of self, self-sufficiency. We are desperate to prove we can manage, yet in trying to be our own saviors, we find ourselves enslaved. Surrender is the act of opening our hands, laying down the burden of control, and saying to God, "Not my will, but yours be done." This kind of surrender is not weakness but wisdom. It is the recognition that we are finite and He is infinite, that our vision is limited but His is boundless. To resist surrender is to live in constant tension, fighting battles we were never meant to fight. But to surrender is to step into peace. It does not mean the storms vanish. It means we no longer face them alone. It does not mean we are stripped of responsibility. It means we now carry it with divine strength upholding us. In surrender, we discover that the chains we feared would bind us actually break, and we are set free from the tyranny of self. Freedom begins the moment we accept that God's will is not a cage, but a path. His ways may seem narrow at times, but they lead to wide, open spaces where the soul can breathe. In trying to control everything, we unknowingly enslave ourselves to outcomes, to the opinions of others, to the endless pursuit of success. But in releasing control, we discover the joy of being led by one who knows us better than we know ourselves. We exchange the prison of self-reliance for the liberty of divine guidance. Consider the paradox. When we cling, we lose. When we release, we gain. A clenched fist cannot receive a gift. Only when we open our hands can God place within them what we truly need. Surrender is the posture of trust, the quiet confidence that He is good, He is faithful, and His plan is greater than our own. This trust frees us from fear of the unknown, because we no longer walk by sight alone, but by faith in the one who sees all. Some may call it defeat, but in truth, surrender is victory of the highest kind. It is victory over pride, over fear, over the endless striving that wears down the soul. It is victory because it brings alignment with the very source of life. When we yield, we are not diminished, we are made whole. We step into the kind of freedom that cannot be shaken by circumstances, because it does not rest on us. It rests on God, who never fails. So, surrender is not a collapse into weakness, but a doorway into strength. It is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of true living. The one who surrenders to God does not lose, they gain everything that truly matters: peace, purpose, and the freedom to live as they were meant to. In His hands, surrender becomes the key that unlocks the life no chains can hold.